We just discovered a free new app called Podcoin. It pays you to listen to podcasts. So you can listen to WST Podcast or your favorite podcast and earn points. These points can be redeemed at Amazon and Starbucks. Everyone likes Starbucks. So download the free Podcoin app in the App Store, or if you have an Android, in the Google Play Store. Just use our promo code WSTPOD. Again, WSTPOD. We love it. You're going to love it. Podcoin. Welcome to WST, your West Coast source for sports. I'm your host, Kyle, and today we're talking San Francisco Giants baseball. All-time Giant great, superstar shortstop, Rich Aurilia stops by the show. We talk about the youth movement, Tyler Beatty, Chris Shaw. We also get into the vets. We talk about the upcoming season and much, much more. So tune in right now. Hey, Richie, thanks for joining the show.
Hey, Cal, not a problem, buddy. Hope you're doing well.
Sorry it took so long to get on, and sorry that Kevin Franzen had to get on before you, but your entourage, it was tough to get your phone number.
Yeah, I made you wait. I made you sweat it out a little bit.
All right. Well, we saved the best for last here as we wrap up spring training and get started with baseball. Bryce Harper signed late, and the Phillies are talking about 50 at-bats as being the magic number to get ready for opening day. Based on your experience, how many at-bats did you need to get ready for opening day?
Well, I think, based off of that comment from the Phillies, I think that's more than enough. When I was going to camp, and it all depended upon, what your role was going into camp. If I was a younger guy fighting for a spot on the team, you get a lot of at-bats late in the game, and usually the guys who are backing up usually get a lot more at-bats than the starters in spring training. So at that point in my career, I think I was getting probably around 50 or 60. And then when I moved into a starting role where I could bide my time out a little bit better, for me, 30 to 40 was always a good number to have me ready to go on opening day. With a player of Bryce Harper's caliber, I would think he wouldn't need that many, and he would probably say he wouldn't need that many. But on the opposite side of that, I think the Phillies want to make sure he's 100% ready to go, so that he gets off to a good start, and they don't get a lot of flack for the amount of money that they signed him for.
And probably they just want to get used to having him in the lineup and in the locker room and with the guys every day. So I think that 50 number is some arbitrary number that they probably threw out there.
I agree with you. I mean, every player's different. Some guys need more, some guys need less. And, I would think that guys that are a little more intricate in their approaches, like somebody we know mutually, your brother, who had some pretty intricate things in his swing, they may need a few more at-bats than some guys that are just basic. But, I think their main goal is to just make sure that Bryce Harper gets off to a good start, because they're planning on going to the postseason this year, and he's going to be a huge part of that.
And those Philly fans, they have a short-term memory, so hopefully he gets off to a good start there.
Yeah, that's not a fun place to play. Usually, a lot of the outfielders playing in Philly on opposing teams usually come back to the dugout with a collection of batteries that they collect out there while they're playing during the game.
Those are some souvenirs from the city of brotherly love.
Yeah.
Now, kind of talking about your approach when you're playing, how did that change from, when you were a starter, the first few games to, the final week of spring training like we're in now, and you get ready, or you're getting ready for opening day?
Yeah, I think the way I approached it was the last 2 weeks were probably the most important to me, because I wanted to make sure, one, I was ready baseball wise, with the right amount of at bats and how I felt defensively in the field, but also my stamina. I wanted to get to the last couple of weeks and usually build up to about, by the last few weeks, maybe 3 to 4 at bats a game, but not playing every day, maybe every other day or 2 out of 3. And then when you get to that last week or so, I always like to get a couple of full 9-inning games under my belt, just for my stamina, the stamina standpoint of the game. It's a lot different when you're playing in the middle of the field at shortstop or second base, and you're moving around the diamond a lot. You're always, you're getting in your fielding positions sometimes 200 times a game. So there's a lot to be said for the stamina side of spring training. And then once you break camp out of Arizona or Florida, wherever you are, I think that's when it hits where you're like, okay, I need to be ready on that day, not the day that we open up the season. So that was my approach when I played, and I was fortunate enough to have managers that, especially later in my career or after I was a veteran, that would take you in their office and ask you what you wanted to do. And I was fortunate enough to have guys like that.
It's always great when you have a stake in it and you're involved in the decision-making process. It makes it easier because of the comfort of getting ready for the season.
Mm-hmm. Totally makes it easier.
Now, is there a funny story or antidote? I'll give you 2 options. Option 1 is you had a great spring, ripped the cover off the ball, and then your season ended up like X. Or on the flip side, option 2, you had an awful swing. You weren't feeling good, and your season ended up as Y.
Well, I do remember a spring training where, I was just tearing the cover off the ball. I think I actually had like 60 at bats. I think I hit probably just under 500, and it was pretty great. Nothing was going wrong. And then I started the season, and at the end of April, I was hitting like 190.
Oh, no.
I couldn't buy a hit. And I remember one day during April, like towards the end of April, a guy called into Dusty Baker's office, and he was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know that, I screwed up, man. I shouldn't have played you that much in spring training. You were hot, and I feel like I kept running you out there, and feel like we wasted a lot of hits in spring training, but, take a day or 2 off here, and then we'll get back on track." And I did get back on track, but, it's amazing how you go from, being so locked in to just searching for things for about 3 or 4 week period of time. So, I know you see other times too. That's why for me, a lot of times when you look at younger players in spring training or guys that are looking to win a spot on the team, it's hard to really judge because there's no consistency in, the opposing pitchers or the teams. They're always moving guys around, and it's all mostly day games. And in Arizona, you're playing in ballparks where the ball flies. So it's hard to judge for me young players that are trying to win spots on the team during spring training. And that's why it was kind of nice at that point when I had that great spring. I was a veteran guy at the time. Dusty recognized that and said, "Hey, okay, here, take these 2 days off. Just come to the ballpark for batting practice. Be ready to go in late in the game, and just sit here and watch guys hit for a little while, and you'll come out of it." And fortunately, I did.
Well, and that's a great point. You were a veteran, you had the experience, you had the track record. So you knew it was just a matter of time before you got back into the swing of things. But a lot of young players that once they fail when all the lights are on them, it's tough to rebound.
It is tough to rebound because, you're having a good spring and you put up good numbers and you possibly win a spot on a ball club. But, once you break camp, that doesn't matter. Now you're just out there trying to win games and get to a postseason. And I think that's when, like you said, the lights are brighter, the stage is bigger, there's more people in the stands, and it's a different atmosphere for a player, especially a young player who's maybe has been in that position before. So that's where you kind of got to like really take these younger guys and kind of, mold them a little bit and make sure that they're not getting too overwhelmed too quickly. And I know you've been a fan forever, and I've been a fan forever, and I've played for a long time. And I think we've all seen it happen to a really, really good young player at some point in our life, and some of them get to bounce out of it, and others never get the opportunity again. So it's really important to take advantage of that opportunity once you have it, and realize it's more of a mental toughness you need than the physical toughness, and at the beginning of your career trying to hold on to your job.
It's a grind. You got to be mentally tough. Transition to the Giants camp and talk about some of their young players. Who are some of the young guys that caught your eye this spring?
Well, one for sure was I was in camp with them for a week as a guest instructor, and watching them for a week kind of gave me a little more insight into some of these younger players that they have. But I think one that really impressed me this year, and I think he's trying to have a bounce back year, is Tyler Beatty. He threw the ball extremely well. I know he just got sent out, I think, yesterday, but he threw the ball extremely well. His fastball was electric. His breaking ball was good. And I think that the Giants probably feel really comfortable where he's at right now, because the way they stockpiled their, off season with starting pitching this year, they have a little insurance policy down there in AAA. So he was one of the guys that impressed me a lot.
So going into Beatty, so I heard he cut out some pitches, and now he's going, in addition to his fastball, he's going more changeup curve. Do you think the changeup was the big difference, or was it the big overhand curve that clicked this spring?
Well, I think it was the command of the strike zone too. I think we saw him a little bit last year for Cup of Coffee, and he didn't quite have that command, I think, that he had coming out of the draft his first couple of years. I mean, everybody knew the arm was there, everybody knew the stuff was there, but the command of it within the strike zone was not quite there. And this spring, what I saw out of him was, he was commanding all three pitches, like you said, the fastball, changeup, and the curveball within the zone, and then having to elevate the fastball when he needed to up out of the zone. I think sometimes your first taste of failure or not succeeding is kind of a tool to make you better. And I think that's what he went through last year and learned a lot, and really set out this year, probably in the off season, to come in, with a better state of mind, in better shape, and ready to try and win a spot on the team. Unfortunately, that didn't work out for him, but, he's one of those guys that's right on the cusp.
Before I cut you off, I think you're going to mention another young guy.
Yeah, I was watching Chris Shaw too this spring. We saw him late last year. Has immense power, but was a big strikeout guy. I've seen a lot of work being done with him, trying to cut down on the strikeouts, trying to put more balls in play. And I think he's another guy to keep on your radar. And also he's a guy, it seems like what the Giants are going to try and do this year, and he's not going to break with the club, but there's a guy, what they're trying to do this year, I think, is have guys that can play multiple positions. And Shaw's a guy who I think came up or out of the draft as a first baseman. Now he's in the outfield. So his stock kind of goes up. If he gets off to a good start and he can play multiple positions, I think his stock goes up in the organization, because that's what it seems like Farhan Zaidi's trying to do, bring in some guys that are, multi-positional and can play a bunch of different places.
Zahidi comes from the Dodgers, and they've got a lot of players that move around. And I think, to your point, he's probably looking to incorporate some of that up in the Bay Area this season.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And it was funny because that conversation kind of, went through when I was in camp. Like, I had this conversation with some of the staff and the coaches, and, with the guys they had with the Dodgers. I think there was one thing that all those guys had in common, whether it's a Bellinger or a Taylor or a Kike Hernandez. They're they could play anywhere and not really hurt you. And I think the one thing they all had in common was they're all great athletes, and they can adapt, and they have the instincts to play these different positions. And I think that's the one thing sometimes in that mindset that gets overlooked, is the player's instinct to play different positions. For me, I guess I'm guessing here, but it would be very hard for an outfielder to transition into the infield. But it may be easier the other way. for infielder to transition to the outfield. And I think that's what you saw some of these Dodgers guys do. And I think that it adds value to a ball club. It gives you more moves you can make during a game. It gives you more lineups you can move around if you're facing a left-hander or a right-hander. So I think that's what they're trying to do. And now it's just a matter of, do you have the athletes with the instincts to do that? And I think that remains to be seen. I don't know if there's anybody that really sticks out yet, but I know they've had a minor league signing, Yangervis Solarte, moving around the infield at all positions and then playing some left field. So I think it's just a matter of time till we see who will be that guy, if they have one of those guys that can do that.
I read recently where Steve Duggar had a great spring and he's hit over 300 and he's going to start in center. Is there any indication of who will join him in the corner outfield spots this year?
I don't know if there's anything set in stone, but what I will say is after being there and seeing who's vying for spots, you would assume that Mac Williamson, out of options, will probably have one of those spots. I would assume Gerardo Parra, who's a veteran guy who signed a minor league deal, he may have one of those spots. And then you look elsewhere. I mean, maybe Cameron Maben, maybe I don't know. But you also got to look at the fact that you're getting towards the end of camp now, and there's a lot of teams that have a lot of tough decisions to make. So there may be some outfielders that don't make a club that may fit in the Giants' plans. And I think that's something that they're really going to probably pay attention to in the next week or so before opening day, so that they can maybe fill a need from outside of the organization rather than go with somebody who's here already who may not quite be ready to break camp with the team.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I'm sure all the fans and all the GMs will be watching those transactions in the waiver wire and seeing who they can add to their team and put their team in a better position to win come the start of the season.
Yep.
Now, if we move into the infield, it's a bunch of veterans. You've got Longoria at third, Crawford at short, you've got Belt, you've got Panic, and you've got Posey behind the plate. But I think the question that our fans really want you to answer here is, where are you and fellow St. John alum Joe Panic going to watch the ASU St. John NCAA game on Wednesday night?
I'll be watching it right from my living room. I know that.
How are you feeling going into the game? I mean, you're in Sun Devil country out there.
I'll tell you what, man, it's a weird team this year because they go out and they've dominated some really, really good teams. And then they've gone out and just laid some eggs against some, lower end of the pack teams. So I think they're probably just happy that they got, the last four in because, they hadn't been to the tournament since Chris Mullen took over. But my whole thing, I actually get to see a decent amount of games out here in Arizona. But again, I think that whole team goes as Shamori Pons goes. So I'm hoping for a big game out of him. But, these teams met up last year early in the year, so they should know a little bit about each other. But I'll be sitting right here at whatever time it is tomorrow, watching my TV, rooting them on. I know Joe will probably be doing the same.
It's going to be a good game. I think it's the play-in game that everyone really has their eye on, and that's why they saved it to tomorrow night, and it's the last play-in game. So it'll be a fun one for everyone.
Yeah, I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Now, if we talk about Joe, he's been in the big leagues. He's been hurt a little bit. What do you think he needs to do to take his game to the next level?
Well, I think he showed it this spring. He came in a lot better shape than he was in years past. It was funny. I was talking to Mike Krukow and Dwayne Kuiper behind the cage one day, and we were talking about Joe, and one of them said, "Yeah, he actually has a waist this year. He doesn't look like a square with feet and arms." So he worked really hard this offseason, and I think it's showing because he's hitting probably close to 450 this spring. The week I was there, he squared everything up, and I think a lot of times when you have a year like he had, this guy's been an all-star. He's won a World Series. He has a Gold Glove. When you have a year like he had with some really weird injuries, and then the talk all off season is, they may not tender you or they may trade you.
Mhm.
there's a lot to prove and there's a chip on your shoulder. And I think that's kind of how he took it. And he's gone out every day this spring so far and showed what he can do. And since he's been hitting and putting up these numbers in spring, I haven't heard one word about, are they going to, find a right-handed platoon guy to play second with him, or, are they thinking to trade him? I haven't heard that one time. So, a lot of credit goes to Joe for going out and taking it really serious this offseason, being ready to go.
So a couple questions and we can kind of wrap up. If we first look at his double play partner, Brandon Crawford, I think he's one of the most underrated and overlooked players in all of baseball. In your opinion, being a shortstop, what are some of the things that Brandon does well that goes unnoticed by most fans?
I think just honestly, defensively, one, when you play in the West Coast, you don't really get as much attention or TV time as East Coast teams get. But the way he positions himself, the way he knows the hitters, the way he knows who's on the mound for him, so where he knows where to play on certain guys. I mean, a lot of things these days are dictated by the analytics of the game and the numbers and the charts and where to play certain guys. But I had a long conversation with him this spring about it. And he goes, yeah, I go off of that stuff. But he goes, I also watch the guys swing. And I also see what he's been doing before, he gets to come play us or we go play them. And I just kind of, go off of my own knowledge of the game. And that's what I love to hear because, old school baseball to me is awesome. And, that's how I came up. You watch a guy swing and you move based off of how his swing looks and playing defense. So I think for me, one of the more underrated things that nobody probably even notices is how he positions himself, like pre-pitch, for every hitter that he sees coming up to the plate.
No, I mean, analytics is a part of the game, but sometimes it just comes down to the swing or the pitch that there might not be data for. So as a ball player, you got to react and you got to put yourself in the best position to succeed.
Yeah, and I, to expound on the analytics stuff, I mean, I do think that a lot of that stuff has value. I don't think it's an end-all, be-all. I mean, I think a lot of those things are, like with a lot of those shifts. Okay, well, you look at the numbers, you look at the charts. Yeah, this guy hits the ball there a lot, so let's just play there a lot. To me, that's like going to a craps table and just putting a bet on a number and seeing if it's going to come out or not come out. But some of these other numbers, they do have validity to them, and I'm a little versed in it, not as versed as some of the people out there, but I do understand that they do have some value, but I don't think they have as much value as some people put on it.
Yep, I agree. And if we move to everyone's favorite Giant, Buster Posey, how has he looked this spring so far, coming back and regaining his health?
Well, he looks good. I think he's just, when I was there a few weeks ago, I think he was just trying to get his legs under him. I think his first start was my first day in camp there, and he had a couple at bats and then DH the next day. I think the goal for Buster is for him to know that he's healthy and for the club to trust that he's healthy, because you're not going to go deep into a season making a playoff run without that guy in the lineup, most of the time. And for him handling of the pitching staff and him being a hitter in the middle of the lineup, he's a really important cog to this team. And I think last year, we saw how just with I don't want to say an offensive drop, but, he didn't hit for power at all. And I think that was because of the hip. So talking to him this spring, I think he's confident. I think he's, feeling healthy. But you know what? It just may be one of those situations where, as you get older and as you have an injury, you may just need to take a little more time to, do a little extra stretching, get a little more prepared for the game than you did 3 years ago when everything was healthy. I mean, and we all go through that as aging athletes when you get to a certain point. I'm not saying he's old, but he's spent a lot of innings behind the plate and he's taken some good hits back there. Which we all know. So I think he and the Giants are hoping that everything comes out good with that hip. And, if he could catch 110, 120 games this year, I think that would be a successful year for him, at least behind the plate.
Yeah, I mean, as long as he's healthy, he's going to hit, and I think the power will come. To your point, I think he was just a little banged up, and he just
Yep.
took a dip with the power numbers. So, as we wrap up, last question, last comment. Do you want to let our fans know a little bit about Red Stitch, the venture you have, and anything about wine?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we myself and Dave Roberts, the dreaded Dodgers manager, and another buddy of ours, John Mysick. Yeah, we all got together years ago, 2007, and put together the Red Stitch Wine Group. And for the last, 10 years or so, we've been producing Napa Valley Cabernets, and then we added some Pinot Noirs and some Chardonnay to the portfolio, and small little boutique winery that produces high caliber wines. And you know what, it's been a nice transition out of baseball into another passion in my life, which is wine. To have something, not only doing the games for the Giants, but actually have something else outside of the game of baseball to focus on and to try and have some success in. So check us out at redstitchwine.com, and we'll try some of our wines.
I know, I love it. My brother has to keep a bunch hidden, or else me and my mom invade his wine cabinet.
That's right. Tell him not to hide that key from you guys.
We know where the key is. We try to pretend we don't. All right, Rich. Well, sorry we went a little over, but thank you for taking the time and to talk Giants baseball.
Yeah, Cal, no problem, buddy, and good luck this season.
All right, thanks.